Despite the spectacular examples of Skinwalker Ranch reviewed earlier here, eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot or other creatures caught in the act of entering or exiting unidentified light objects or portal like structures in the sky are fairly rare in the annals of cryptid lore. Reports of unknown lights simply spotted in the same vicinity as sightings or strange creatures, however, occur more frequently. Anomalous lights, as we've noted throughout this book, can manifest in myriad shapes. Sometimes they form spheres or columns, other times they resemble craft like UFOs. They may or may not display obvious connections with other phenomena, but establishing that odd lights are frequently seen in hotspots or cryptid sightings is important to our study. Here is an older but previously unpublished report of an accident that occurred in a Chicago forest preserve, where a decades long history of strange lights and sounds preceded sightings of a hairy bipedal creature and a UFO. Okay, I've been in Chicago for 15 years and I have unfortunately not heard about anything similar happening when it comes to the suburbs and forest preserves. I know that there are animals when you drive through these forest preserves. Some animals suddenly rush out on the road and they can smash your car. You can kill them. You can get in an accident. I know those stories, which is pretty common and normal. I have not heard anything yet when it comes to supernatural so far. Okay. A retired state and federal government worker with a degree in biology from Northeastern University contacted me in February 2015 to share his creature encounter, the memory of which he'd been trying unsuccessfully to banish since 1967. He asked that his name be withheld, so I will call him John Turner. Turner had set out at sunrise on one warm August morning of that year to ride his new bike on some forest preserve trails in an area along the Des Plaines River. Des Plaines is just another town in the in the suburbs of Chicago. In Des Plaines River, known as Robinson's Forest and Schiller Woods. The trails lay just east of Chicago's O'Hare Airport. That's so funny because there's a book that I'm trying to buy and an author who I've been trying to contact through various ways. He's not a Christian, but I don't mind. Who been researching this so-called Lake Michigan slash Chicago Mothman. Supposedly, there's so many people who witnessed Mothman in the Chicago area airport and the Lake Michigan, well, the whole Lake Michigan area, which is I find it fascinating. I didn't know anything about Bigfoot. He told me I was just planning to have a fun trip. He took his Schwinn Varsity, I'm trying to read this brand, 10 speed along a dirt path that led to an asphalt trail along the river's west bank, walking the bike where the path became too rough. Along the way, he decided to stop and rest for a few minutes on a fallen log overlooking the river that flowed dappled with gold from the sunrise behind the woods on the other shore. As Turner sat drinking in the scene's beauty, he began to sense something unusual about the place. A remarkable thing I noticed was that I heard a bird whistle, some type of exotic bird I never heard before, he said. It happened 4 or 5 times. A couple walked by on the trail as I sat there, and the lady said that she heard it too. He decided to move farther along the trail, still walking his bike, and soon came to another good vantage point for watching the sunrise. A patch of 5 foot tall ragweed plants just coming into the pollen season separated him from the bank, he said, but he was still able to see through the fronds. Turner noticed an orange glow from what he assumed was the dawn's light shining through the trees, and then quickly realized the waters harbored something much less tranquil. I was just sitting there imagining how the area must have looked back when the Native Americans would paddle down the river, said Turner, when I saw what first looked like a shadow of a figure. Okay, now it's becoming interesting. It was big and tall with a cone shaped head. but man-like, and it was coming out of the woods where I saw the glow. It walked and stood erect, with its head up. Turner added that it was pulling on some vines that hung off the trees as it walked toward the edge of the river's east bank, about 80 feet away. Once it had fully emerged from the wood line, Turner realized this was no shadow. It was a dark furred creature that stood about 6.5 feet tall. Okay, so a little bit taller than me, he said, and Turner stands 6'1". Okay. And he estimated its weight at about 300 pounds. It seemed obvious to Turner's presence as it slurped water from its cupped hands and then swirled the shallows of the riverbank with its fingers as if hunting for crayfish or other small edibles. The creature was man-like but covered with jet black hair, about 4 inches long everywhere except for its dark gray, leathery face, said Turner. He estimated that he watched it for about 2 minutes, his mind racing for some rational explanation for the being. Doug, do you want to continue?
Sure. And then, to his horror, he began to feel a tickle behind his tongue from the nearby ragweed. Although he tried mightily to fight down the urge to cough, the ragweed got the best of him and he had to clear his throat. The creature immediately straightened at the sound and began to look for him, peering across the water in Turner's direction. Afraid the creature would find him, Turner crept with his bike around the ragweed patch to a different vantage point. He could no longer see the creature on the opposite shore, but what happened next made him very glad he had moved. Turner had neither seen nor heard the creature cross the water, but he suddenly spotted it on his side of the river, dripping wet and only about 30 feet away from where he had stood. That meant it had either swum or waded across the river in 5 minutes or less, estimated Turner, with no audible splashing. Luckily, he hadn't yet found his new hiding place. Turner hardly felt comforted by that, however, as he saw the creature pull 4 or 5 large flat stones from the river bottom and toss them one by one right at the spot where Turner had been sitting, where he coughed. Turner watched it hoist one of the slabs over its head and slam the huge missile at his recent position. It had pinpoint accuracy, he said. It was trying to flush me out. Unfortunately for Turner, the ragweed was still close by and he couldn't stifle another cough. The creature immediately turned where Turner now stood, and the two of them shared a moment of mutual surprise. I looked at him and he looked at me, said Turner. Even in his shock, he drank in the details of the creature's physique. There were places on his thighs and buttocks where the wet hair had separated to reveal brownish, charcoal-colored skin. Turner wasn't sure what sex the creature was, since it was covered with too much hair to see genitalia. The creature appeared to have no neck. The hair on its head was much longer than on its body, falling to its shoulders like a cape. There's also a spot on its head where the water had slicked its hair back enough so Turner could see an ear. It was big, on the side of its head like ours, except it was a little pointed. Turner added that it looked more muscular than heavy, as he could see its muscles flexing beneath the skin as it moved. Its arms were very long, and it had large hands with black nails. The nails were also long. They were blunt at the ends, and a few of them were broken. Turner knew, with a prickle of sick dread, that whatever this creature was, it could easily best him in a fight. Well, yeah, it's 300 pounds, is what he thought. 6 foot, 6.5 feet, 300 pounds.
This thing could have maybe even beaten Goliath.
Yeah, well, yes. Okay, or maybe it's the same type of creature as Goliath was.
Yeah, who knows?
The creature had been checking him out that long moment too, and it suddenly took action. He made a quick bluff charge to Turner, then he picked up 3 smaller rocks that were lying there in the ground somewhere, and he threw them like fastballs by a baseball pitcher. One hit the rubber tire of his bicycle, and another glanced off Turner's forearm as he tried to shield his head from the assault. Turner began to run back along the trail as fast as he could while pulling his bike, and realized the creature was chasing him. The creature howled twice. The sound reminded Turner of a long, rising moan of an air raid siren. He felt the hairs rise in the back of his head. He was following right on me, and he came right behind me so fast I could hear him make mumbo-jumbo noises like someone talking backwards. He had a language. Turner performed an imitation of the sound, a deep-throated string of syllables that I know I would not want to hear from anything chasing me. Regarding the mumbo jumbo language, we've noted that vocal attribute several times in this book, not just in Bigfoot encounters, but also in relation to upright canines, which I guess is an earlier chapter. At the same time, the Bigfoot was chasing him and making that sound, said Turner. He could hear other similar voices screaming from across the river and assumed there were friends or families of his pursuer. It was like the gates of hell were open, he said. The creature was within an arm's distance behind me while the others were calling to it. I thought it was going to get me, and I thought I was dead, and I said out loud, "Oh, Jesus, help me, help, help." And the minute I said that, it was gone. It was poof, disappeared. I looked across the
Wait,
river.
wait. Can we please comment on this? What do you think just happened? Let's say this is 100% true story. What do you think just happened?
Well, let me just finish the sentence here. I looked across the river and saw a bunch of dark shadows as the group of other creatures, went back into the forest on the east side. So he's saying that this thing disappeared when he called out to the Lord, and the other creature, and he saw other dark shadows that he assumes are the other group of creatures, and they disappeared back into the forest. Well, I mean, so let's just take it at face value. It must be some sort of spiritual creature then. And so he goes on and he says, and we'll read it here in a second, but he says, I'm surprised he didn't catch me. And maybe it was just trying to scare me away. Yeah, or maybe, so you have two things going on. If it's a completely like disembodied spiritual creature, well, then it wouldn't be able to throw the rocks. However, maybe the rocks were an illusion. I'm just talking out loud. I'm not an expert on Bigfoot, right? So I'm just talking out loud here.
No, that's okay. We're just giving biblical, logical, whatever
Yeah.
comments. Yeah.
He said it went through the water and it was wet, but he didn't hear anything. So now, granted, this is first-person testimony a couple of decades after the event, but it's been burned in his memory. So we just take it as face value. And that's what I was alluding to when I said, oh, maybe it's the same kind of creature as Goliath was. Goliath was a descendant of the Nephilim, which were from the sons of God, or angelic creatures, watchers, spiritual creatures who somehow took on physical form. And that right there, you have a spiritual creature takes on a physical form. Like you have a spiritual creature. So imagine, so I'm going to use a word that's sciencey, but I don't mean it to be sciencey, but just, I don't have a good word for it. So like a dimension that's next to ours, and it's a spiritual dimension, and then a creature steps into ours, like stepping into, and then as this disembodied creature steps into our reality, it like takes on physical shape. And the picture I have is like, I don't know, if you imagine, it's Christmas time and we're recording this kind of, and imagine you have cookie dough, right? Because you're making cookies for Christmas, right? And you just hang the cookie dough, like you're just hanging it like a sheet, all right? Imagine this is cookie dough, just hanging it, and then you push your fingers through, and your fingers suddenly take shape, right? That's what I mean. Like this is the spirit realm, and this is the physical, and the creature comes through, and it takes on physical attributes of this dimension. All right, maybe it's that, maybe it's something like that, and that's how it can become embodied, and but yet still move, and then still move in a way that is not embodied, like through the
Yeah,
water.
this story and your explanation perfectly match what I've been talking with different guests on my channel. We're also, covering different material, different authors. They all say the same, just like you. We know that there's so much we don't know, but it looks like it's not either or. It's both a spiritual and physical entity. It's primarily a spiritual entity that chooses when and how to manifest in a bodily form. So you can change forms. Maybe we can call it as a shapeshifter. Just because it chose to look like a Bigfoot one day, that doesn't mean like in 10 days from now it may not look differently. Again, we don't know the data. It's a little bit speculation, but that's okay because we enjoy it's mysterious, and we just wanna contribute to the topic as much as we can to the best of our abilities. Doug, how would you behave if you were if you were there in the forest instead of this guy? Would you be yelling, screaming immediately, not even waiting to check what will this creature do? Would you be getting on your bike immediately? Would you be, or you will stay there and command in the name of Jesus to be gone? What would you do?
I would probably do that last thing. I would probably step towards it and say, in the name of Jesus, you have to leave this place. But probably more aggressively than that. I mean, there's been times, I remember when I was a teenager once, and I was just going for a run, and I was chased by some wild dogs, big wild dogs, and I held my ground. I screamed at them, go away, no, and they stopped and they ran away. Now, I'm not saying I'm like a bear. If this was a bear, no, I wouldn't do that. I would run. And bears cannot run humans, so I would be praying, but differently, right? But if I'm assuming this is a spiritual creature, which I think Bigfoot probably is, I don't think, I used to be on this podcast called Paranormal, where we looked at peer-reviewed research of paranormal phenomena, and we did an episode on Bigfoot where there were some alleged hair from that, supposed to have been from a Bigfoot, and the research says no, it really was. It's not a wasn't a mammal. It was, or not. Excuse me. It wasn't a like an ape or an unknown creature. It was probably a bear. The DNA, had degraded some, but it was the science didn't hold up. That said, at the end of the episode, most of the people on the episode, most of the panel were like, yeah, I believe in Bigfoot. I mean, there's just countless sightings. If just one of them has to be right, I mean, are they all wrong? Now, funnily enough, I was sort of shocked that that's the view of people have on Bigfoot. I would fall on the other camp, thinking you're mistaken, that you're not seeing a Bigfoot. But I've come a long way since then, maybe, and I'm more open to the idea. There's a couple other things going on here that she mentioned without drawing too much attention to, is that this is an area that has historical roots with Native American culture. There have been bones and artifacts found in this nature preserve, which is just aside from O'Hare along the Des Plaines River. And by the way, that is pronounced correctly for our friends who are listening, maybe from Europe, who speak French. Here in America, we have some towns that we call Des Plaines, even though it was clearly French about 300 or 400 years ago. English took it and they decided to change the name from Des Plaines to Des Plaines, right? And that's true. But before the French got there, this was a Native American area, and eventually the French and then the English later pushed them out. Also, it's one of the most heavily, it's right by O'Hare International Airport, which is one of the most heavily trafficked airport for U.S. military cargo in the United States. Look, correlation doesn't mean causation, but I am aware that Bigfoot sightings often take place near military institutions. And sometimes they correlate with Native American sites also. Now, that's hard to don't want to overstate that. Most of the United States had been a Native American, at some point, but I'm just stating a couple of facts. Doesn't mean there's a correlation, but I do think there may be a correlation with U.S. military. U.S. military and Bigfoot sightings, other strange phenomena. It's not an unusual thing. And, we like to pretend here in the U.S. that, oh yeah, it's all about science and stuff. But there's more to the U.S. military on some levels than just science and weapons warfare. And I'll just remind people that the Watchers, according to the Book of Enoch, the Watchers taught men how to fight warfare better, how to create weapons to kill, to gain power over other humans. And it's probably okay. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. That stuff still goes on, right? We get occult knowledge. We as scientific military people get occult knowledge from spiritual powers to create more powerful weapons, and sometimes technologies that result in hybrid creatures, perhaps strange creatures. Can I prove any of this? Look, we're just talking, man. This is myths, mysteries, and majesty, right? But the fact that this thing disappeared in the name of Jesus, and I don't know, is she a Christian author? The author is.
I'm not familiar. I would cautiously assume she's not,
Yeah.
but if she's putting this as a genuine eyewitness report, I can only applaud her, even if she's not a follower of Jesus, that she didn't omit that part.
A
She
lot of
doesn't have to be
people,
believer.
a
Yeah.
lot of people in the UFO research community will admit that sort of thing, but it's consistent, and there are connections between Bigfoot and UFO, which we will continue in the chapter here in a bit. But and look, if you are encountering these creatures, call on the Lord, because you can't command these things to go away and with your authority, but you can call on the Lord and the Lord will respond. Which suggests that there is a spiritual element to these things.
Amen. And you know what's funny? I don't want to spoil it. I didn't read the chapter, but I was skimming through it. I saw there's like a subchapter about UFOs, and you
Oh well,
just
I
said
don't mean to give
this
spoilers.
connection.
I don't mean to give spoilers, but the you
No, 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 it's fine.
in the UFO research community, this again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a ufologist. I just dabble in it. But in the UFO research community, it is known that abductees who call out in the name of Jesus stop the abductions. Um, they do stop abductions. Um, if abductions are maybe not conducted by non-human creatures, maybe they're part of um, military experiments that are imitating aliens, then it's a different story, right? Humans don't always respond to the name of the Lord, but the spiritual creatures do.
Thank you. I can continue because you talked a lot, so you can, take a break, couple
Okay.
minutes. I'll continue. Yeah, thank you. Turner didn't stop to question his fortunate escape, but continued straight for the parking lot. When he reached it, he said he dropped down on his knees and thanked God for saving him. He felt like he had been in some sort of Hollywood monster movie, he added. Yeah, I would feel the same. I wouldn't know if I had some crazy vision, or if something is messing up with my brain, or if this was true. Usually when a shock happens to you, any type of shock, good or bad, at least in my experience, you need some time to get adjusted to it, to know, like, yeah, that really happened. There was a young girl in the parking lot who was about to head down that same bike path, he said, and he told her not to go. That there was a crazy, hairy, wild man throwing rocks out there. That sounds funny. She heeded his advice and left.
So
He said, Mhm.
my first impression would be that's probably what he saw, and his mind ran with this, his mind. Um, that's what happens sometimes. Our minds fill in the gaps. So, um, my first when I first read this, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's exactly right. It was a crazy wild man throwing rocks, and your mind filled in the gaps. And when he called on the Lord, that calmed your mind, and maybe you sort of woke up, and that's why the thing disappeared. That's my rational explanation. That's where I would go.
Yeah, that sounds so psychological. Like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it makes sense.
that's
But
where that's where I
yeah,
would go, and maybe people who think, well, he's whacked out based on what I said earlier, maybe hopefully that makes you feel like a little, I'm not quite as whacked out. But anyway, let's continue.
sounds good. Um, so she heeded his advice and left. He said the same thing to a man standing by a parked truck, but was dismayed that the man seemed less inclined to believe him. Turner didn't argue, he just headed home, horrendous images churning in his mind. The creature's face was most memorable, he said. He described its nose as resembling a pug dog's, or a human nose that has been broken so it was flattened. Its forehead sloped back to a point or a sagittal crest. Its eyes were large, round, and entirely black. And Turner said it appeared the creature was having some trouble seeing him. He was blinking a lot, like the sun bothered his eyes, said Turner. And as he blinked, I could have sworn they were reflecting like mirrors. The eyes weren't completely reflective, as they were still black in color, he added. But as the large pupils moved back and forth, Turner would catch glimpses of a reflective surface within them. The creature then steadied his eyes, said Turner, and began to turn his whole head from side to side in order to get a better look at the intruding human. He noticed another odd thing too, which was that the park seemed to go oddly silent during the encounter. Yeah, whenever there is some evil presence or manifestation, animals are always either silent or they leave that area for a time period.
Or alternatively, maybe
Mm-hmm.
he stepped into an alternate reality. Maybe he turned
Maybe
into
like another dimension or
yeah,
something.
yeah, maybe he stepped into the upside down, and so or something like that from
Mm.
Stranger Things. Um, and that's where the creature was, and he was, and nothing else was. Hey, there you go. Oh, I shouldn't have had to said Stranger Things, but maybe that's what happened. I mean, and throughout medieval Europe, people always they were people were warned, don't go into the forest because you might disappear. You might go into the quote unquote fairy, which fairy isn't small little pixies. It was horrifying, sort of semi divine beings that lived out there, and you do not want to get caught by them because you'll disappear. And I mean, why do they come up with these stories? It's yeah, because sometimes people wonder. I mean, the rational Western person will say, "Well, because people wandered into the woods and they never came out again. They disappeared because these woods were vast compared to our woods today." Okay, sure, fine. Uh, or and there's a supernatural element of things going on in the woods. Maybe this creature was like a supernatural manifestation of a spirit over the creature or over the area, so like maybe that's the spirit, the local quote unquote deity, or the local spirit that is embodied somehow of the wilderness. And so hey, I'm just speculating, man, because
Yeah,
there are
I enjoy it. Don't worry. By the way, I just found out about some other lady author who wrote a series of books, and they're all like, "Stay away from the woods. Don't go in the woods. Something horrible happened in the woods."
yeah.
Every book title has in the woods, or from the woods," but it has that woods part. I'm like, I have to get at least one book to see, and read. I'll dedicate one episode, at least one episode, to her books because she has a whole series and people are buying and reading, and minimum she gets is 4 out of 5 stars. So that's minimum. I'm like, okay, this must be some decent stores. I'm like, eventually I want to get her books too.
I mean, I know seers who see spirits of trees. Okay, I know they see spirits of different nature spirits, and that's going to freak Christians out, maybe who But there's some of these things have spiritual impressions. Okay, and um, don't overread what I said, but they're there. I mean, there's a reason why in the ancient world people went to trees for spiritual encounters. Okay, so, there's a reason why Native Americans thought Bigfoot. Well, they didn't call it Bigfoot, but creatures that look like Bigfoot were territorial spiritual creatures in certain areas. All right. There's also something called Thunderbird, which was a giant winged creature that was also thought to be like a territorial nature spirit.
The Mothman, right? Is
Yeah,
that the same?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, it's Where's that in the Bible? Well, if you really want to, we can dig into it, but that's not the point. Okay, we're going to stay right here, right now. But I mean, it's all throughout history. It's just sort of it's there. It's throughout history. People have understood this is the case, and humans need to stay in their area and let the the dark spirits have their area, and eventually humans will go conquer, take dominion over it, but you need to do so in a cautious manner.
Yeah, one thing I just want to add I would just want to add something when you said about trees. See, I didn't know that many ancient civilizations found trees to be sacred or whatnot.
Yep.
But but in Eastern Europe, before churches, before any of that sort, uh, the ancient pagans, the Druids, the just my ancestors who did not believe in the Most High God, at least not in the way that we describe. For them, the oak tree was the sacred tree. So sometimes they would meet under the oak trees. It was almost like their little church. It was like
Yep.
their assembly. So I just remember that when you mentioned that the trees were like found to be sacred.
The oak tree, you said?
Hmm.
Yeah. Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre. Abram, and that's in Genesis 14. Abraham. I mean, why did he go there? Why did he go there?
Maybe that was the only tree in that area. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
We
and
can
so
only
if that's the
speculate.
case, why? And so the assumption was, well, the spirit of life must be there. Yahweh must be there, and that because God was the giver of life. But these trees lived a long time, and so I mean, there's just something there. Okay, I don't want to overread it. I don't want to sound like I'm a pantheist, with Native Americans worshiping tree spirits or whatever. But the fact is, there's something there, and we're not supposed to worship them. We're supposed to take dominion, right? And
Yeah,
we
we
know.
just want to tell the audience, don't go hug trees. That's not the
You,
point.
you can hug a tree, just don't worship it. It's not. It's part of the creation, right? We worship the Creator, But just know that what He created was pretty awesome. It's like there's a lot here, and it's just not all rational. A lot of it is spiritual, and it's awesome. I mean, God created a very awesome universe. Like the Earth is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I have a sentence or two, and then it's your turn.
Okay.
So, like I said, there was no sound from any animal or birds. It was just the creature, the river, and me. Astute readers will recognize another case of the Oz factor.